Welcome, everybody. It's Saturday night, which means it's time to talk about some geek news, reviews, and opinions. And therefore, welcome to this episode on May 21st, 2016. I'm your host, Adam Mickelson, a.k.a. Drac. I hope everybody has had a good week because, well, it's been busy for me. Even though this is supposed to be summertime, for some reason it got busy, and part of that is just because so many things piled up at once, including the fact that I actually kicked off the Summer of Gaming with the Geeks with our first videos from me and Brenton on our Devil May Cry review coming out. So I hope people are enjoying that. But of course, I'm not alone in this podcast. I'm being joined by my fellow YouTubers, fellow geeks, fellow critics, and fellow bringers of awesome and also facepalm-worthy material. And so let's go ahead, because that's going to be this week, people. I'm not trying to be mean, I promise. But we have a lot of facepalm-worthy material this week. So let's go ahead and introduce them. First of all, we have the Shadow Blazer himself, Alex Short. He has come out of the darkness, and he's here to assure you he ain't afraid of no ghosts. How are you doing tonight, Alex?
I'm doing well. Most of my week's been pretty average, as always, working and doing my usual stuff, but also got the announcement of Erased getting an English dubbing, so I'm very excited for that, though it's going to eat my wallet dry.
Which company is doing it?
There hasn't been a formal announcement yet as to who the dubbing house is.
Oh, just that it's getting a dub. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And then we are also being joined by Stephen Romney, a.k.a. of Romney's Reviews. I was about to go into the whole Studio Phantasma thing, but man, it's just not there anymore. I don't need to do it. I don't know why I have to constantly do it.
Yep.
How are you doing, Romney?
Doing pretty good this week. Kind of kicked my ass, though, because, well, for starters, there was confusion regarding the date of when I was supposed to take my driver's test. So I came on the wrong day, went through all the trouble to get down there, told to come back the next day because the person who scheduled my test didn't look at the right month when they were scheduling it. But it gets better. As soon as I'm about to leave the driver's license division, the battery dies, so the car is not able to start. And so I had to call my dad, he had to come, give me a jump, and then it just wasn't enough, because even after the jump, we tried running it, it died, and so then we figured, okay, well, maybe the battery, let's go over to AutoZone. And this is on Redwood Road, which is a very dangerous, very busy road here in Salt Lake County. And so I'm driving down to AutoZone, all the meters are dead, I have no idea how fast I'm going, I have no idea what is happening, and I'm just praying. It's like Han Solo saying, come on, baby, hold together. And so go into the AutoZone, we have them take a look, the battery has no charge to figure out what's wrong with it, and so we switch out the battery, they test it, they say, oh, your alternator's broken. So then we got to figure out, oh, crap, we got to basically take this to the place where we got the alternator, get the alternator swapped out. And then I switched to a different car to take the driving test the following day. And so I take this driving test, and I fail because what I thought was the left turn lane was supposed to be a barrier. So if we were to consider it an actual situation, I more or less crashed into a barrier twice and then hit parking cones when trying to parallel park. So there's that. And then this gets better, because at some point on both Friday and Saturday, I tried my best to get to the theater on time to watch a movie, but between the construction, the bus times, and just sheer bad luck, I missed the movies each of the 3 times I tried to make it out to watch these movies. I'm not able to make any of the show times. And so, yeah, it's been a hell of a week. But on the bright side, I did finally buy a PS Vita.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, I got it used from Game Peddler. The owner there, he's pretty cool. Just my pro tip, do not get him started on The Force Awakens. Trust me.
Well, you and I have different opinions on that one because, well, I'm not allowed there anymore. So I'm not allowed at that Game Peddler. And not because of anything I did, but because one of my friends actually used to work for him, and it didn't end well. So I'm not allowed there anymore. We have our panel here. We may have an additional with Brenton, but we're not sure because his schedule in summer is still kind of busy. But hopefully we'll be able to see him. Unfortunately, Aldo will not be able to make it, but that's okay because all of this facepalm-worthy material would only just hurt his head because we've got some crap to talk about.
Yeah, it would hurt his head and his palms, from the face palming.
It really, really would, and there's no way of avoiding this. So let's just go ahead and get this started, shall we? So the first story that we have to talk about is actually, so we got some Nintendo talk, and this is probably at least to me, a breath of fresh air, at least a little bit of good news. And so we've been talking about the NX for a while now, and one of the things that comes up a lot, and a lot of you listeners have said you're sick and tired of hearing me say it, but it was a big deal when Nintendo made the announcement, so I constantly refer to it. And that is that the NX was announced to be the successor to the Wii U and to the 3DS. Well, now that has been unconfirmed. Kimishima-san has come out. He has said, no, that's not the case. This is neither a successor to the Wii U nor to the 3DS. He's come out basically saying it's a new way to play games, which I think will have a larger impact than the Wii U, but I don't think it's a pure replacement for the Wii U, neither the 3DS. And so there's a reason I brought that up a lot, was because that was a big claim to make. And so now I'm actually glad that they clarified that, because I don't want to say it this way because a lot of people are going to take this offensively, but it lowers the expectation a little bit. It actually makes things a little bit easier to digest when we actually do get the NX info. I'm still a little worried when he says it's a new way of playing games. The same thing was being said about the Wiimote when we didn't know a whole lot about it. But, I'm still worried about that, but that at least gets kind of that monkey off their back, that this is supposed to be not only their successor to their console market, but also to their handheld market. That pretty much is a good idea, because I have a feeling that they'll have another handheld somewhere down the line. There will be a 4DS or however they want to do it. But
how would that even work, a 4DS? I mean,
I'm saying they just use the word, or they just use the catchy word and say, yeah, this is the 4DS. This is the successor to the 3DS.
Well, yeah, but just when you take into consideration what the fourth dimension actually is, I mean, the 2DS, it made sense. It was the 3DS, but only 2D, and 3DS has the 3D. 4DS, they'd have to find some way to implement time somehow as a major gimmick, but they kind of don't need to since there's already an internal clock. But that's a separate tangent. I've been watching a lot of PBS lately, so that's why that popped into my head.
This is just going to be one of those nights, people. I'm not even going to try and explain anything like that.
Well, yeah, it's because there's a new show with Stephen Hawking called Genius that kind of had people do experiments to see if time travel was possible, which is why it popped into my head. But as for my thoughts on this, I got a very diplomatic vibe to it, where I don't necessarily see this so much as a way. It doesn't come across as clarification, but more as an attempt at placation, because they know that there's a lot of people who bought the Wii U, especially when they bought the Smash Splat bundle, that are quite justifiably pissed off. And so that's probably a way that they're trying to basically say, cool it, please, have faith in us. This is you're not going to be wasting your money on this console, please, don't hurt us.
Well, another thing that I tried to confirm on this statement is I actually wanted to go back and see who made the original statement of it being a successor. Was it Iwata-san or was it Kimishima-san? Because I believe that quote came out a little after Iwata-san's passing.
Yeah, from what I heard, from what I've seen, for the length that we've been covering this, and from what I've been hearing when it was brought up back at the college, I think it was primarily just a rumor, because you had a lot of those fake patents, those fake screenshots that people kept kind of coming out with. People saying that it was going to be the successor because everybody was going all the doom and gloom of the Wii U, and even the larger YouTuber community were doing it as well. And so I don't think there was any official statement that it was meant to be the successor. It was just one of the many rumors that Nintendo really needs to put down. And so far, I think this is their first step of saying, okay, we need to put some of these rumors down. They're probably starting to finally do damage control, but even then, the statement itself, keep in mind, people, the article we're going off of is a translated quotation from a Japanese publication.
Yeah.
And so it's not even like they've made an official announcement. This is just something that came up in an interview with Kimishima-san. So...
Well, and the other thing to take away from this is that, yes, it's comforting that this rumor has been debunked, but it's not, like, I want to kind of reemphasize this, it's not entirely comforting, because he is still saying it's a new way to play games. I don't think it's a pure replacement, but it will have a larger impact. So at that point, it's not like he's degrading the NX. He's really not. He's still saying, yes, it's going to be innovative. It's just not going to be innovative in this way.
Yeah, I just worry because when he says, "Oh, it's going to be a new way to play," I'm just thinking, "Oh God, what gimmick are they going to throw at us this time?"
We won't know until after E3, so I don't know what to tell you there, Romney.
Yeah, it's just again after Star Fox Zero, I'm just like, no more gimmicks, Nintendo, for the love of God.
Yeah, I'm kind of there too. Alex, your thoughts on
Hmm.
the recent comments from Kimishima-san?
Well, this is a little confusing, I guess. I guess it's how you define successor. Usually I think we think of successor as the next in step, next in line, the next to take over,
Yep.
and well, is that an X or not? And obviously we keep going off so much speculation and hearsay and rumors, and we're all just waiting for the few months to count down finally to get some concrete answers.
Let's cut out some of the brass tacks here. Yes, the NX is a successor to the Wii U in the fact that it is the next generation console. It's the next in line, just as much as the Wii U was a successor to the Wii. So at that point, you can't get away from that concept, but the fact that they're saying that it isn't this other element entirely does help, at least a little bit. I'm sorry, I interrupted your thought.
It's fine. It's just, it confuses me, really. I kind of wish they could be a little more clear, or I don't know how much more you can be clear until you finally come out and reveal it, obviously, which is still months away at this point. But I just don't know what to really make of the whole, it's not a successor, but it is, but it isn't, that we've been going back and forth with. It's just, we're ping-ponging at this point.
That's the problem with revealing a big console like this, is that in some cases, like, you have to make a statement, but you want to be quiet. And so at that point, you can't really do a whole lot as far as a reveal without revealing the console itself. That's why I'm saying get it out there, get it out as soon as possible so that you can build the hype machine for a solid year. And if you gave us at least something to work with at E3, which everything that I've read said that they're going to stick to their guns on that it won't be there. But you lose months of advertising time. Of being able to say, no, this is what this game console is capable of, and you could have literally IGN or Polygon just toting your hype at that point, and that's just months lost with that whole concept. It's one of those things that actually, I think, hurt the hype machine a little bit with PS4 and the Xbox One reveal events, where they only went over, like, a little bit, but then they left us with 4 to 5 other questions of, like, oh, Romney, are you still having issues?
Yeah, I thought I lost you guys for a second.
Okay. No, we'll figure that out in a second. But yeah, when they did those reveal events, they had, like, these major questions. Okay, what's your game library going to look like? What's this going to look like? What's this going to look like? And they couldn't answer because they were too busy trying to be quiet about all of the cool announcements they had. So at that point, you can kind of hurt yourself in that regard, and you might as well just, if you're going to do a big reveal event, just do it. Do it, get it out there, get yourself a good solid year of advertising time, and you're fine.
Yeah. I mean, this almost sounds probably a little counter to what I've been saying, but I think at this point, Nintendo is probably best to just kind of keep on the quiet until they're finally ready to reveal everything, instead of kind of continuing to drop hints in interviews like this, for example. It's probably just better this way, because it's good that I guess that they are dropping these hints, because it is getting people talking like us right now, but at the same time it's getting a little frustrating because, well, we're all definitely a little concerned at the crossroads of the company. I wish I could be as optimistic as others like Pat, the NES punk, who say, of course Nintendo's still going to go solid even if NX doesn't do that amazing. Right, but I don't know if I can feel that optimistic and confident right now with Nintendo.
That's my issue, is, like, I want to be just as positive. I want Nintendo to be here for my kids and their kids. But at the same time, I can't deny that the Wii U has had issues. Mm-hmm. It's been in the red ever since it's been out, like, as far as console sales and also as far as game sales are concerned, because, again, they have the library there from the first party, they don't have it from the third party.
Yeah, not to mention their decisions regarding things like YouTube and social media also hurting any marketing potential.
Yeah, so they've made a ton of bad decisions as far as this is concerned, and financially, I mean, the way that I have to look at this is, what happens if the NX isn't successful? Is that the last console that Nintendo can make? Because they spent all their money in one shot, and it didn't pan out. You know, that's one of those things that we actually have to legitimately answer.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, Nintendo's not helping with that.
Yeah, though to counter that, they have gone on record saying that they're changing their business strategy in regards to the NX. Like, they've made it clear that they can no longer sell things at a loss, and so if the NX doesn't do as well, it may not hurt as bad if they go up front and say, okay, we're not going to sell this at a loss, because that obviously is going to hurt us in the long run. And so it's kind of, it's hard to say if I'm optimistic or pessimistic, but it's more of a case of we're definitely seeing a regime change, and so a lot of the bad decisions that we've seen Nintendo make in the past may start to slowly, keep in mind, people, slowly be undone. It's going to take time, and there's going to be a lot of resistance on part of a lot of the old guard that are still at Nintendo, so...
Agreed. So final thoughts before we move on into the next story. My thoughts are exactly what I said. I mean, I feel really weird for saying it, but this is kind of good news. This is a monkey off their back that now they can move forward from. I think at that point it really does lower our expectations of it so that we can be wowed when they reveal the NX.
My final thoughts is, well, I can't say much more on NX, but the idea of 40S and potentially evolving time, this just makes me think the 40S is going to be a time machine. We're going to have another Mario is Missing, and we're going to actually travel through time with Luigi.
I'm just saying, man. They'll use it as a gimmick.
Well, I mean, if it is going to be a gimmick, then that would just mean we need a re-release of Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what Mario is Missing is. It's just Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego, but without Carmen Sandiego or any of the catchy music.
Wouldn't that be Mario's Time Machine, though?
Same difference.
Yeah, really. Okay, so moving on to the next story here, and Romney found this one, and I know you got a good chuckle out of it, but you probably also banged your head against your desk when you read it. Well, because that's what I did.
Oddly enough, this story I found while I was roaming around the mall where the movie theater is after having missed the showtime. So it was very much I was in a very interesting place in terms of already being angry and then seeing something that made me just that much angrier.
Yeah.
Should I give them the rundown, or?
Yeah, go ahead and give the rundown.
All right. Well, you see, there was a recent episode of the Fox animated comedy Family Guy that aired recently that featured a clip from a 1980s video game by the name of Double Dribble.
Double Dribble.
Yes, the one with the... Basically, if you've seen the Glove and Boots video, we all know the joke. Point being, there was a brief clip in this episode as part of one of the many pointless cutaway gags that Seth MacFarlane just can't seem to do without, that featured clip from the actual game showing a glitch that allows the player to get a free three-point goal. And it came to light that that clip was taken from YouTube. Fancy that. But it gets better. Much, much better. Because you see, after that episode aired and was entered into YouTube's very, very flawed automatic copyright content ID algorithm, the original upload that Fox took the clip from was struck down by an automated DMCA takedown.
Yep. And I actually went and double-checked the channel that this happened, so I don't watch a whole lot of Let's Plays from them, but this is... I was like, I know I've seen this before, and I know why now, because I think Alex has recommended it. The two best friends play this, or it's also part of Machinima, so I probably also saw it from there too. But it's just like, okay, so they played Double Dribble, and Seth MacFarlane, or at least the Family Guy staff, took this footage and then immediately put in a DMCA. Like, I get that it's part of the algorithm, but it's because of Family Guy that they got that. Regardless of the fact that this footage had existed way before then.
Mm-hmm. And the YouTube user who is switched with a 1 for the I is not the only user, according to the updates on this article, which is from Torrent Freak, by the way, that there was another YouTube user by the name of Hamza who had a clip showing footage from Tecmo Bowl that was used in that same episode that was also taken down. Now, the clips in question have since been restored, and Fox has issued a statement in regards saying that the video in question was removed as a result of Fox's routine efforts to protect its television show Family Guy from piracy. As soon as we became aware of the circumstances, the content was restored. But if this article proves anything, it proves why this automated bullshit doesn't work. You need human eyes. You need a human brain. Computers are stupid. They'll take down anything if you basically put in the right equation.
Is this legitimately just Fox, or was Seth actually involved in this too?
No,
It
just
would have been
Fox.
just Fox.
Okay.
Yeah,
'Cause I would-
if Seth was involved with this, so...
No, you know what? I think he needs to be involved in this. And the reason I think so is because, given this crap happened, calling back to a couple of weeks ago with the whole Sheila Booth story, I think Seth needs to call up both of these YouTubers and say, dude, I'm really sorry. We didn't properly credit your footage. We didn't do anything like that, and yet we still took down your video.
Thing is, here's one big difference, though. One thing that I've noticed that with a lot of these animated shows, oftentimes the creators are actually at odds with Fox as a company. I mean, if you look at a bunch of Simpsons episodes, that's why they take so many jabs at Fox for so many reasons, because they're often at odds. And in this case, it would also be a case where Seth would just be another story of Seth MacFarlane just being at odds. I mean, he's been wanting to leave Family Guy for years, but they just won't let him go. So if anything, it would just be a case of, oh, sorry, it was out of my hands, because this was Fox, the company, not anybody actually involved in the production of the series.
Well, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I kind of want, Seth to leave Fox, but I also want Family Guy to leave Fox because, well, they haven't really done a new joke in a couple of years now. Yeah. And so at that point, I mean, I already have misgivings about this, but this is just freaking gold. They take their footage and then they DMCA them. And I get it. It's part of the algorithm, but at the same time, and I agree with you, Romney, this system has flaws, and here is one of the biggest flagrant ones.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's facepalm worthy yet laughable that all of a sudden it's Fox, the big company, taking the footage from the little guy and then in turn slapping the DMCA on them.
It just makes me wonder what would have happened if Universal decided to put Gem and the Holograms on YouTube. If the same thing would happen, because thing is, Universal did the same thing, where they took a bunch of YouTube music clips and used it as the score for that film. Meaning that if they put Gem and the Holograms into the algorithm, all those videos would have been taken down.
No, I agree completely, but if you think about it, this whole story has proven Doug Walker right. That yes, Hollywood is afraid of them. Because they had to use their own footage to be able to do this, and then they said, oh, wait, but that means we're going to have to credit these guys. Slap!
Oh, wait, it gets better. Because if some of you... Now, this isn't related to the story, but since you mentioned Doug Walker, this actually does bear some relevance. There was recently a closed-door hearing in regards to revamping the DMCA. And it had a lot of the usual lobbyists for the RIAA, the MPAA, but the big difference is that you had the head of Fight for the Future and the head of Channel Awesome, who actually managed to get into this meeting. And they even described that a lot of the same things, where the industry tried to basically paint it in control, but because those two voices of reason who actually represent the little guys were there, they weren't able to steer the meeting the way they wanted to. Granted, they basically kept getting drowned out repeatedly because, the media industry is full of dicks, but it's pretty much that same sort of bullcrap that the various record and movie industries have been trying to perpetuate. I mean, there's still a lot of crap that's even on the table in Congress that could make the current copyright laws we have on hand even worse. They're literally trying to bring SOPA back again and again and again.
Well, it never died as far as they're concerned. They just keep on bringing it back, but they change it a little bit, so it's not SOPA. It's SOPIPA, or whatever they want to call it that given week.
Yeah, it's just what they're trying to do now is that instead of going through Congress, they're basically saying, oh, okay, we need to come together. They're basically trying to pull a Thomas Edison by basically strong-arming these websites, saying, you know what, we want to have the power to basically shut your website down, meaning that you have to be the one to police it, not us.
Yeah. Alex, your thoughts on this whole Family Guy fiasco?
Sweet God Almighty, this Oh my god. I couldn't believe this when I read it. It's unbelievable that this could happen, but at the same time entirely believable because of how absolutely broken this system is. This is why I wasn't all that impressed when YouTube's CEO, or I guess the Google CEO or whoever the lady was, came out and said, okay, here's the changes we're starting to roll out. And it just like, that's great for all the paid content creators who have enough to generate revenue. It doesn't really help the rest of us, though. And this just goes to show you, you need to start taking more steps, YouTube. I mean, just me this week, I must have gotten like 6 new copyright content flags. Flags, not strikes, thank God, just flags. And it's really just annoying. And this is, once again, like I said, more proof that we need to fix this broken system, and it's getting annoying. And I'm glad people like takedownabuse.org and that guy with the glasses have talked about this and retweeted this story out to keep more people informed.
Yeah, because this is just... This is a living example. I don't mean to repeat myself over and over, but this is a living example of why this system is ultimately flawed. And I saw the same thing that you did with the YouTube CEO or the Google CEO coming out and saying, well, we're doing all this and all this. And I kind of had the same thoughts you did, Alex, where it's like, congrats, but you're benefiting, channels that have that revenue, not necessarily all the channels. Because I can already tell you, like, at least from what I kind of got out of that whole thing, channels like Markiplier's or Game Grumps or things like that, things that have the millions of subscribers, that's going to be okay for them, but then you have channels like ours where it's like, yeah, this doesn't really benefit us at all.
Mm-hmm.
And really all we're asking here is this system needs to be taken out. This automated system, which in turn is being abused, and companies are actually coming out and saying they're abusing it. Because I mean, I don't know how many people saw the whole the whole video that Brad Jones put up on, what was the video again, Alex, that got flagged? And
yeah, it was, it was, oh god, I can't remember the movie now. It was one of his reviews.
It's from the same person that made The Pretender. And at that point, like, they even openly admitted, because Brad had talked to the guy who was being hired to flag crap. He was literally being hired to flag copyrighted content. And at that point, I'm screaming in my head. It's like, yes, these organizations exist, and yes, Sony will pay this little puppet organization to constantly flag everything. This system is being abused. It really needs to be gotten rid of.
Indeed. Problem is, Google, even though Google has made it clear that they are against the abuse of the DMCA, well, the Viacom lawsuit is what's caused a lot of this bullshit in the first place.
Yeah. No, I agree. So,
yeah. Hashtag, where's the fair use?
Yeah, so to kind of end since it's kind of towards the end of the story, we've mentioned the website Takedown Abuse in the past. There was that meeting that had a bunch of copyright representatives of the RIAA, the MPAA, basically all these various copyright holders who are out to try to impose SOPA-like legislation. The exact words they were using is that they want to implement a take-down, stay-down system. And so all I can recommend is that the next time the U.S. Copyright Office decides to open itself for public comments, actually comment, because I know people get sick of me hearing this, but we were able to beat SOPA. We can do it again.
Yeah, and in regards to that whole concept, and Alex, if you have a comment on that too, I'm at least happy that Channel Awesome had a place at the table. Because in essence, like, all of the organizations you named could have literally just said, "You're letting these guys in here."
Well, if you look at the quotes from the people from Fight for the Future, that is more or less what they said.
Yeah, they
at
did.
The meeting.
But you still had those two organizations there to be able to say, "Yeah, that's what they did." Because at that point, it just reaffirms the problem.
Yep.
So at that point, I'm at least glad they got a seat at the table. Channel Awesome is awesome, Channel Awesome is awesome that they got a seat at the table. Who is the head of Channel Awesome? Is it Rob, or is it?
No, it's not Rob. I'm actually looking it up right here. I'm trying to.
I know Rob is like one of the administrative.
The person is named Mike. I know his first name is Mike.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because I think Lupa mentions him in her like rant against Channel Awesome. But I'm at least glad that one of those organizations got some kind of mention, some kind of seat at the table on those, because it tells me that slowly but surely, even though Hollywood doesn't want to admit it.
Yeah, the names, people that were sent was Jeff Lyon for Fight for the Future and Mike Machad from Channel Awesome.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But
Mike's
this basically,
the CEO, so.
What this basically tells me is that finally, like, where Hollywood does not want to recognize these smaller talent organizations exist because they are, to some extent, intimidated by them, now they have to. And they don't want to. They can sit there and go, la, 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 you don't exist, but they got a seat at the table, which means the next time that they meet, they're probably going to get a seat again. And so at that point, they're not so little organizations anymore.
Yeah,
because they're slowly gaining power.
Yeah, not to mention that all the people in that meeting aren't all on their side, because they also had representatives from Firefox and Google and the Electronic Freedom Foundation, and so they were also there. And so it's a case of, it's not just this ragtag group. There are larger organizations that have some semblance of power that are also fighting against this. Granted, now, I don't mean to play devil's advocate for YouTube. YouTube's hands are kind of tied because, well, they don't want to piss off these larger media companies because that draws in a bunch of revenue. But the fact that Google has taken a stand saying, yeah, this is ridiculous, let's fix this, it says a lot.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much all we could cover on it. Let's go ahead and move on to the next story here. And I really don't want to move on to this, especially considering that I just basically gave this game a spotlight the last week. But let's go ahead and do it. So if you guys haven't seen, like, I just barely did a video on this because unfortunately live streams for me are suspended throughout the summer, but I'm still going to try and do that content. And the video that I just recently did was on a game called Stardew Valley. And Stardew Valley has been getting a spotlight from Pro Jared. Is it Satchbag? No, not Satchbag. It's Space Hamster. That also did a video for it from, not Normal Boots, but he's part of the whole mystery box thing. And so at that point, if you guys don't know what Stardew Valley is, here's kind of a rough explanation. If you know what Harvest Moon is, then you know what Stardew Valley is. It's roughly like a farm simulator, but not in the Farmville kind of sense. And unfortunately, there's now a heated debate over Stardew Valley, but more specifically a mod. So in the game, you can actually marry certain characters. Like you can ingratiate yourself with them, you can earn a reputation with them, and it can either be male or female. And there are only set ones that you can romance. This mod actually allows for you to be able to romance little kids.
Only one little kid. Let's make that.
one in particular. Name is it Jazz? Is her name Jazz?
Yeah. I'm not sure how that would be pronounced, but that's probably the pronunciation.
Yes, so this basically allows you to marry her. Now, I'm going to clarify this because the story does. In Stardew Valley, it's not like you're doing the nasty, okay? You get married, you have a house, you share all your stuff, and it's oh so cute. But there's nothing like that. You get like a wedding ceremony, and that's it. And so what this mod basically allows for you to do is be able to marry this little girl and have her as your wife in this case, and be able to share all that stuff. And so there is a clarification here that this mod is not a sex mod. It's never going to be, because Stardew Valley isn't that kind of a game. But it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's still a little squicky.
It is, yeah. But I do want to make one thing clear, because this is what it's... Although people kind of have panned the mod, some people kind of see it as a just for the lulz thing, which is how the original creator of the mod kind of uses that. It was just for fun, not meant to be taken seriously. It has sparked a bit of a debate in regards to the depiction of certain acts and certain ideas and concepts in fiction. It's kind of the whole case of people debating of, oh, does depicting this in fiction encourage it in real life? And that's what I see a lot of these comments devolving to. Now, keep in mind, we're going off a story from Kotaku Australia, and Australia's laws are radically different in regards to a lot of content. I mean,
Yes.
if you watch any Zero Punctuation, Yahtzee often likes to lampoon the fact that games like Mortal Kombat are basically illegal in Australia. So,
Well, I like to lampoon the fact that, yeah, while games like Mortal Kombat are illegal, you can literally get a Wii party game that tells you to spank your partner in order to advance to the next level.
yeah. And I've been looking at some of these comments, and a lot of people are, and that's what I've seen the debate devolve into, because I feel that that's what a lot of this really is about. I mean, keep in mind, I'm not like promoting, I'm not saying, oh, it's a good thing, but I do think it raises an important issue of the whole, does depicting something like potentially grooming a child for abuse, like, is there a place in that in video games or in any kind of fiction? And, well, my takeaway is, there is if it's done right. A good example is the Vladimir Nabokov novel Lolita, which isn't glorifying it. It basically puts you in the head of someone who does it, but then you realize just how fucked up all of it is. And so, this mod does bring up that discussion, and I'm of the opinion that it's better to have it happen in fiction than rather happen in real life because, well, the characters are not real.
I wish I could say I was there. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like seeing things objectively and being able to do all that, but I felt bad. Like, literally, Alex put this up a couple of hours after I had just recorded the footage, and I was editing it, and I'm just like, oh, dang it, don't. Because at that point, I mean, granted, I'm seeing this from a very biased perspective, guys. I'm a dad. And already, like, it just seems really squicky to me. Not to mention the fact that there's also a bunch of, well, recent current political events that are creating a lot of hubbub, and it's hard to not hear about them on a regular basis. And so at that point, this whole thing, I'm all for objectivity, but I can't help but shudder at the whole prospect.
And I don't blame anybody for shuddering, because I understand it is squicky, but from what I've been looking at why the mod came about, mainly came about from a lot of people complaining just how uninteresting a lot of the romanceable characters in Stardew Valley were. And that was where it basically started from something innocuous and kind of innocent, that, oh, these characters, they don't really have very interesting backstories. Some people's like, oh, I wish this character was marriageable because there's more of a backstory that you actually go through. And it started from there. It's just, yeah, I'm with you. It is squicky. I have a 3-year-old, well, 5-year-old niece now, so I understand where you're coming from. But how up in arms people get all over this, it's like the same argument that you see of, does violence in video games encourage violence in real life? A lot of studies, at least what studies are there, have pretty much said that no, it doesn't. If anything, it's more of an outlet for those tendencies. And Stardew Valley is definitely not the game to address those sorts of issues. That is 100% obvious. But the way people are like approaching this, saying, "Oh, this has no place in games at all," that's why I bristle a little bit, thinking, no, there is a place. It just needs to be done right.
Really quick, I'm looking up and down this article, but I don't see the creator anywhere in here. Has the creator approved of this mod?
I don't think he's issued any official statements at all, and I don't really blame him because that would be a very tricky PR thing.
That's one of those things that we need to clarify here. This is a mod of the game. This is a modder that did this, this isn't being condoned by the creator of Stardew Valley. I mean, for crying out loud, the creator of Stardew Valley allowed for Pro Jared to take an element from another game and put it into this game. All right? So that's something that has to be considered here. This isn't the creator. This is a modder. Yeah,
this is a fan mod. And there's not even going to be much more done with the mod. It is literally just for the lulz, triggering like a simple coding of, oh, we'll just trigger the marriage events in this, like in these things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I understand why people find it kind of squicky. I understand the outrage over it, especially in Australia of all places where laws tend to be a bit more strict. But I've been looking at some of these comments. It's just, people are very quick to kind of do the whole, won't somebody think of the children sort of thing that we've heard with everything in regards to the depiction of violence, the depiction of alcohol, so on and so forth.
I again will say, like, if these people are in the U.S., then there are current issues also that are fueling the fire on this one, too.
Indeed, especially when people get into various debates about the depictions of those sorts of stories. And granted, there have been some pieces of fiction that handle it tastefully. I mean, Lolita is a good example. there are certain episodes of Law and Order SVU that have handled the topic
Oh,
with
jeez,
a
yeah.
fair amount of class. And so, while I don't condone the mod, I don't condone like kind of that whole scenario in any way. I think people are kind of getting a little too crazy in the whole of, oh, this has no place in games. It's just a case of there's a place, Stardew Valley isn't it.
But I will also say that you do make a point. That's actually one of the things that I noticed. Like, I've seen the Pro Jared video like everybody else, and yes, I've already kind of picked who I want to romance, and it's just because, well, she's freaking awesome. But there is a problem where a lot of the characters that are romanceable are kind of blank slates, as far as I am concerned. But, I mean, from what I've seen on the feedback, if this guy actually does get I haven't seen anything that the creator's considering a sequel, but like, let's just say for the sake of argument he did, that would be something that would be addressed. I know the original Harvest Moon and even some of the Harvest Moon games in the series had the exact same problem.
Yeah.
So at that point, they do get fixed eventually.
Well, yeah, and if you want to look at a game that handles the whole, for lack of a better term, child marriage thing right, that would be Rune Factory 2. And that's not even because of anything salacious. It's not trying to explore any darker themes. It's just that in Rune Factory 2, you have your first half of the game where you're playing the adult, and then after a time skip, you then play as your kid, basically. And your kid is able to romance some of the other kids, and it's kept in a very innocent sort of style. I mean, yeah, there is a bit of a quote-unquote marriage ceremony, but it's put in the right context, saying, oh, this isn't real, this is just two kids who are kind of experiencing love for the first time. It's really innocent. And so it can be done. It's just a case of it just takes setting the proper context. And so if the creator of Stardew Valley decides to do something with this idea, whether it's creating something that is like a sequel where characters from the first game are aged up or so on and so forth, that could be an avenue.
Yeah, exactly. Alex, we've been going for a while here. What are your thoughts on this, especially since you're the one that kind of brought this mod to our attention?
Right. Well, I have to agree with Romney on this matter. It is squicky, yes, but this is like a lot of things. It has its place in the world of video games. As we continue to push what video games are beyond from the simple hitting a square ball back and forth with two square paddles on a screen, we continue to acknowledge that games are an artistic medium. So we need to see where are these boundaries of artistic medium within this medium that we can push. I'm getting redundant, I know. And, well, yeah, I hate to say it, but this is probably one of them, is the idea of child marriage, child bride. And, again, to this mod's credit, this is as tasteful as you can probably make it, because this is not gratuitous depiction of sexual content. It's just you're wooing and romancing a character. And Romney has already, you and Romney both cited examples of where that's done tastefully, and I can name one too where I've been playing Long Live the Queen, where you can pick your fiancé and you're a 14-year-old princess, essentially. Mm-hmm. So there you go. You can do this, and, well, there was the big issue made when Hatred went to Steam and got removed from Steam, then got put back, and Gabe Newell gave an apology. Well, there you go. We're putting up with the idea of depicting extreme violence in the name of an artistic medium. This is another thing we're going to have to do. We have to kind of take the good and the bad. We just have to find a way to do it well. Hatred is not a really good example, I know, but that's kind of the point. That's kind of the point that I'm getting at, is people stood up for the free expression of those creators. Well, we have to stand up for the expression of this creation as well.
Yep. As Voltaire put it, we may not like what you say, but we'll defend to the death your right to say it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that I have problems being able to say on that regard, because, again, I'm coming at this from a very biased perspective, but I am very pro-free speech and freedom of expression, and so at that point, it's one of those things where I hate to admit this is one of those things that is allowed under that regard. But here's the thing that I also want to amend in that regard. I can defend the right that they have the right to say it. I don't have to like it, because I also have that freedom of expression to be able to say I don't like this. So, I think we've pretty much hammered this as much as we can here. And actually, so we have a bit of a discussion tonight. Before we move into the entertainment portion of the agenda, I actually want to get into that because it's kind of a bridging point between the two. Because, well, we've had listeners ask if we're going to talk about this. Alex has been hammering it us into our brains all week, and I'm not kidding by that, because Alex found stories every time and wanted to put this in, thought it was topical, and so at this point, there you go, Alex, we're talking about it. So, was it Monday? Was it Monday when he actually did it?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it was Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you don't know who James Rolfe is, all I have to do is say angry video game nerd, and you probably at least have some level of knowledge who he is. Okay? I even know, like, aunts and uncles that have nothing to do with gaming, have nothing to do with YouTube, and all I have to do is say angry video game nerd, and they all went, is that the one guy who curses about bad video games on the internet? There you go. Because that's the level of saturation. So James Rolfe, his real name, put out a video this week. Basically, I can't remember what the actual video was titled, but it was something along the lines of Ghostbusters, I refuse. And so obviously that's clickbait right there. You have to see, okay, well, why is he refusing? And he does go into his argument about why he doesn't want to spend his own money, which it would be his own money, to go see the new 2016 Ghostbusters. And he lays out his argument. And whether you can agree or disagree with it, it's his argument. He doesn't like the direction that they're going. He much would have preferred to see the Ghostbusters 3 that Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis had made arguments for so long. And he makes his argument very clear. And, of course, the first thing that happens as soon as he said anything bad about this upcoming all-female Ghostbusters movie, and frankly, I watched the video, and yeah, there were a couple of arguments that I had issues with, but it was tasteful. He didn't get hateful about it. In fact, for most of it, he wore a smile, which, for people who know the angry video game nerd, he totally could have come out in the nerd attire and just ripped this movie a new one. He could have. In fact, that probably would have been in his best interest, because, well, he's done the Ghostbusters videos, so he might as well do it here. And so we did this, and the next thing that happens is, I think Patton Oswalt was first. Patton Oswalt comes out on Twitter, and I'm not even going to quote the tweet because it's stupid. I mean, honestly, it's not Patton's best work as far as I'm concerned. If he was trying to be snarky, he was failing at it horribly. And on top of that, if you didn't want this guy to get a whole lot of credit, well, congrats on that one, Patton. You put in the link right there, which of course people are going to click it and go watch the video, and then they're going to look at their recommendeds and go, who's this angry video game nerd guy? Click, and therefore you basically given them the gateway drug to Cinemassacre, which is his channel. So he comes out first. Then we have Brad Jones, a.k.a. the Cinema Snob, come out and do a video, basically mirroring James's video, but being, well, for lack of a better term, a snarky bastard about it. You know, which is Brad's shtick. I get that. That's what he does. Again, I'm going to say it's not his best work. I've seen him do tons better on things like midnight screenings and whatnot, but he decided to do this. And the whole story is basically how mainstream media, or at least more mainstream than YouTube or game trailers would allow, keep on bringing up James Rolfe, calling him a sexist, calling him a homophobe, calling him all of these things, and then giving a link to the damn video. So at that point, because
Romney's already facepalming.
Yeah, Romney is already facepalming. And I'm trying very hard not to yell because I'm trying not to wake up my baby across the way. But that's one of those things that they, you know, for as much as they want to call out James for being this offensive SOB, all they're doing is funneling people into his channel. So it's one of those texts that I sent to you, Alex, which is basically thanks for the views, a-holes, because that's really all you're doing. So at that point, that's kind of the discussion tonight. Is James in the right? Is the internet losing their collective crap in the wrong or in the right here. I'm actually going to say that both, or like as far as my opinion is concerned, both are in the wrong and both are in the right. And the reason is because, again, a lot of James's arguments aren't the greatest arguments that you could have made. But at the same time, to sit there and call him a sexist, and that's not even the reason why he's not interested.
Yeah, and I think that's the larger issue. Not the whole, funneling views. It's more the knee-jerk reaction of, he's not going to watch this movie that has female leads. He must be sexist. And that's a larger problem that I'm seeing here. I mean, when I looked at Patton Oswalt's tweets, when I looked at the video, both sides made good points. James Rolfe said, I don't want to pay money to see this film. I don't think it's going to be good, so I'm not going to pay money to see it.
Yeah.
And that's a valid choice. This is coming from the guy who made a video explaining why he's not reviewing Captain America Civil War while it's in theaters.
And
so
if I remember correctly, did you get a little bit of backlash about that?
Well, mainly from this one guy who thought I'm not going to go into it, but mainly from this one guy who thinks, oh, no, basically trying to do you need to do this for your channel, even though it was pretty clear he hadn't really watched a lot of my videos to begin with, and was just saying, I want to give you feedback because your name is also Studio. And again, well-intentioned, bit condescending, but point being, I understand where James is coming from, but I also understand where Patton was coming from, where he was basically making a point of, it's kind of ridiculous how people are quick to judge a movie and say something is bad without having actually seen it. And people said, but you gave so much flack for the prequels, and he said, yeah, after I saw them. And so that was the point that Patton Oswalt was making, is that we shouldn't be so quick to write off a movie based on what we're seeing initially, and we shouldn't be quick to call something bad without having seen it. Go ahead, Alex.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, but at the same time, I mean, the point of a trailer is to entice me to go see the movie. So, and if and movie tickets are expensive as can be these days, right? I mean, I know, like here in Salt Lake City, in the Salt Lake City metro area, a ticket's probably going to be $8-9 depending on what time of day you go. There are other places, probably like California, where a movie ticket's like $12. Yeah. It's ridiculous expensive. So, if you're commercial, if you're pitched,
the hosts alone are guaranteed $15.
Yeah, I mean, that's without concessions too, right? So if your commercial's not enticing me to go see it, then I don't see the need to go pay money. So yeah, I say it. I'm going to judge the book by its cover here. So I'm going to have to really kind of stick up with James on this one. Maybe, in fairness, I'm already nostalgic and kind of fond for the original Ghostbusters, and I don't think a reboot or remake of it's really needed.
And frankly, all three of us are coming out in James's side on this one, at least in the concept that this is his call, it's his money. Mm-hmm. He gets to make that call. He gets to make that decision, and whether or not you think he's a sexist or whatever you may think of him, it's his decision.
Yeah, and plus one thing is that we've always been the champion of the whole idea of voting with your dollar, and that's what James is choosing to do. Voting with his dollar, the exact thing that we encourage. And keep in mind, people, this is coming from someone who doesn't have nostalgia with Ghostbusters and is willing to give this reboot its fair shake. I mean, the trailer kind of won me over, but keep in mind, I don't have that nostalgia, and so I'm coming at it from that perspective.
And we could also say, like, unfortunately Aldo isn't here, but one of the people that you kind of had a discussion with via comments, Alex, was Aldo. Because Aldo was interested in it, and he was still interested in seeing the movie, but I think, in essence, you both were agreeing in one concept. It's James's right to be able to say that, whether or not you agree with everything he said.
Yeah, and James is not alone either, because there was that other video by Comic Girl 19 who explained a lot of the same reasons and why the film is not going to be well received. And she explained it's not because of the women, it's because you have people making it that don't have that passion for the project, and that they're basically trying to remake the movie with the female cast instead of doing something new and different. And there are those arguments. The reason that I get a little bit frustrated is that you have that knee-jerk reaction of everyone saying, oh, they're immediately writing it off because it stars women, when that isn't really the case. And that helps nobody.
No, and before people hold on. Before people start writing the nasty comments and all that and saying that we're doing that too, I'd like to point out, we've been talking about this for a good couple of years now, and the last thing that we had a problem with was the female cast. We didn't care.
This could star all men again. This could be Seth Rogen, Kevin James, Chris Rock, whatever. It could be all those guys. I still wouldn't see this movie based on the trailer and based on, again, on the concept. I just don't think this is a movie that needs to be remade. And it is ridiculous that the internet's taken this knee-jerk reaction to James basically calmly and rationally saying why he feels like he just doesn't want to see the movie.
Well,
right? And James doesn't do a tremendous amount of movie reviews. He does stuff for movie reviews for Cinemassacre, but he usually goes over classics like old monster movies or horror movies.
Yeah, let's clarify that, because James is a director. James loves making films. But to say that he's a movie reviewer would be the same as saying Louis Lovehog, a.k.a. Linkara, specifically reviews superhero movies. He goes to see them, he's not reviewing them.
Yeah, it's kind of, he goes to see them, he gives his opinions when asked, but that's not the main focus of his enterprise.
Although I would like to say, given the argument that Alex has made about trailers, and given our feelings on it, why on earth did we see Batman v Superman?
Because we've been talking about it for several years and people wanted...
Yeah, that's really true.
Yeah, and again, the whole thing, what I find the most disheartening is that knee-jerk reaction of everybody to immediately accuse someone of being sexist just because they won't see a movie because it has a female lead. This is something I had to feel a little bit when I did my review of Lucy, where people are like, oh, you're talking bad about this movie, but it stars Scarlett Johansson. I'm just like, that doesn't change the fact that it's a shitty movie.
Yeah. The other thing that also kind of came out to me, and maybe I'm just the only one thinking about it, but Alex's little tagline here really sums this story up. I ain't afraid of no SJWs. Social justice warriors are rearing their ugly heads in the worst possible ways imaginable, and the fact that there were actual online, there were websites, there were magazines writing about James Rolfe, just tells me that just tells me the level of saturation the whole social justice warrior culture shtick is in media right now, and how it just needs to stop. Because if you read any of these articles, people, at least this is the impression that I got from them, is that James was personally coming out and beating them over the head with his opinion, and that's not what he was doing.
Not in the slightest. He was actually being rational, and if you see his video where he talks about the history of...
Which was really fun!
Yeah, it basically goes over the history, and it basically gives a much better light of why he doesn't want to see it, and it's not the most... And there's actually a really good quote. It's not related to this story, but I believe it kind of summarizes this whole thing perfectly. Give me a moment to find it.
While Rodney's looking, I mean, just putting, even without the articles, just the Twitter storm that went over this is pretty ridiculous, too, to the point people were... And I don't know if I'm quoting directly, but people were saying, I can't believe that somebody actually married him. I noticed his wedding ring, and somebody actually replied, probably a gold digger for his gumball machine. And anybody's...
So I'll tell you the one thing that should be a problem is, again, look at Patton's comment. We just recently reported on Patton, didn't we?
Yeah.
He's lost his wife. And he's making comments like this. Holy crap, man. I want to feel bad for you, Patton, but when you come out and make the comments that you did, it's kind of hard to do that.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, granted, he was a bit vindictive with that first time, but again, he was making a valid point, but keep in mind, he's a comedian, first and foremost, and so he was naturally wanting to be, well, trying to be funny, and so both sides kind of make an equal argument, and the quote that I found, it's from a Time magazine article. This is probably the most political we're going to get on the show aside from the copyright thing, but...
You mean aside from the guy at the Trump rally?
Yeah, it does deal with politicians. Now, this is an article talking about kind of the rise in violent actions on part of Bernie Sanders supporters, and I think the quote pretty much summarizes it perfectly in regards to with Bernie Sanders' message, where it says, "Violence and intimidation thoroughly contradict and undermine the spirit of the movement Sanders is hoping to ignite. Someone should tell all of his supporters that." To which I added, violence only begets more violence. If we want everything to be improved, we have to get away from this sense of violent zealotry that's engulfed everything, not just politics. It's also engulfed fandoms. It's engulfed sports. It's engulfed entertainment media. It's engulfed pretty much every fucking thing in this world. This whole sense of violent zealotry and this knee-jerk reaction to basically immediately brand someone as the enemy just because they have a differing opinion.
Well, I mean, for crying out loud, we've stood on that. I mean, I'm not trying to tote this podcast in this regard because I don't want to bring controversy to it. I want people to enjoy it. But, I mean, how many times have we stepped out in favor of Anita Sarkeesian when the internet hates her? How many times? I mean, I stepped out recently against an organization that people wanted to rally behind, and instead I was supporting the big guy instead of the little guy on that in that one. And that's one of those things that is strongly starting to happen all the time now, is that people immediately go towards the "you're a hater" button, "you're a sexist" button, "you're a homophobe" button. And frankly, guys, it just needs to stop, because at that point, like, I'm all for any kind of argument, but when you use words like that, the argument stops, because everybody doesn't want to be involved with it anymore. I mean, as soon as some of the comments that people get, some of the vitriol that happened with this Twitter outrage, it just made me immediately lose like 20% of my energy just reading it that one time. It was absolutely frustrating, and I think Romney's having a little bit more internet complications, but we're going to keep on moving on here. Any final thoughts you want to add into this one, Alex? Because again, you're the one that's been... Actually, one thing I would like to bring up with you is, like, you brought up the Twitter war, but at this point, I mean, Twitter wars are just kind of expected at this point. I mean, especially politically.
They're kind of expected, but I think what more bothered me was like, again, some of the attacks against his wife, attacking the fact he's married. Like, again, I'm going to quote the tweet best I can remember it from what I saw. That was, somebody actually married this whiny little baby, and probably a gold digger trying to get at his Star Trek V gumball machine. That's not funny. And two, don't attack the guy's wife. She has nothing to do with this.
Well, that's the funniest thing, is that when you cannot attack the credibility of the individual, who do you go for?
You go for the family, and it's fucking disgusting. Don't do that, you little dumbasses. That's absolutely appalling. And
I love the fact that everybody here is cursing like sailors, and I'm trying very hard not to.
Well, you do.
And yet I'm the one who's supposed to be. Like, I'm supposed to be the guy who's on the screaming tirade.
Well, again, you do have the baby trying to sleep in the other room, so we understand why you're trying to keep the level calm. And it's probably good that you're the calm one right now, because, I mean, I'm choking on my own rage here. But at the end of the day, you know, James has his reasons to not go see the movie. That's fine. And you know what? If I'm going to bring up another YouTuber, much smaller by comparison, obviously, but YouTuber I follow by the name Black Critic Guy, fun guy, great videos. You know, earlier in this year, he put up a video saying, "Oh, I'm not. This is." In fact, he does this with a lot of times, but he said, "I'm not going to go see." Oh, damn it! I just forgot the name. It was the Michael Bay movie about Benghazi. I forgot the title all of a sudden.
Yeah, I don't know the name either.
I think it's called 13 Hours, I think.
Yeah, 13 Hours. That, yeah. 13 Hours. He put up a video saying, "I don't want to go see 13 Hours because, well, I don't like Michael Bay movies, and I don't trust Michael Bay to handle a sensitive issue." And, you know, most people tended to agree with him and praise him for it. Nobody was, you know, going on tirades calling him unpatriotic. There were the few who disagreed, but they disagreed reasonably, or some had even come out and say, "Well, I saw the movie. I thought it was good." So, nobody, again, called him unpatriotic or a traitor or Obama hater or Clinton stooge. No, they all had reasonable arguments, and that's what you should do, too.
And see, that's the difference there, is when you actually bring legitimate arguments to the matter, when you actually, like, you say, okay, I get where you're coming from, and you do all that, that's an acceptable argument, and frankly, arguments need to happen. I mean, obviously, we're three YouTube content creators. We're going to have arguments with people that are going to leave bad comments, but there are only a certain kind of comment that we're going to learn anything from. Any person who comes out and just says, "I hate this because you suck," that's not going to teach us anything. In fact, that just makes us want to remove the comment. Yeah,
it's not productive. And I take it from someone who still gets flack for some of the verdicts I've come to in Monster Clash when it comes to the movies I've compared. Granted, some people have brought valid criticisms, like on my Halloween video when I've explained that I couldn't make it through the rest of the movie. That's a valid point, saying, "Oh, you didn't give the movie its fair chance. You didn't finish it." But then you've got other people who go on, say, my Wolfman video, who basically, "Oh, the taste is only in his mouth," and going on a full tirade, or even some saying, "Oh, we shouldn't compare the versions. They're too different. We shouldn't compare them." That's just not a productive discussion to have. It really isn't.
Mm-hmm. And kind of to add on to the discussion that I was trying to make with you, Alex, was yes, Twitter wars happen, and yes, this Twitter war has been especially stupid, but Twitter wars are just kind of expected at this point. I actually think the biggest feature here was the websites and the magazines coming after him. Because
that was the most surprising thing, really.
Yeah, because that's a level of it's a level of exposure, but at the same time, it's like, and especially because I read those articles, and I'm sorry, but there's one of them, I'm not going to mention which, but that writer really needs to be taken out to the back corner and let them have a good crying or whatever they're going to have, because they basically wrote it. That angry video game nerd, he said those words, and it hurt me. Leave the Ghostbusters alone.
Hashtag triggered.
That's literally how that came across, and I'm like sitting here reading this, going, this is what some people consider to be a credible journalist writing this. That's sad.
That's why I left Movie Pilot, people, because that's the kind of stuff that you see on a daily basis.
Well, it's one of those things where I really wish we had Aldo here, because Aldo writes this stuff like regularly, and I already have a feeling like some of those articles, he would have had issues with how they were written, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the sentiment, because again, he's pro Ghostbusters, he's gonna go see it, but just the way that they were written, and he'd probably just look at them and go, and I'm writing for this magazine. Why am I not writing for your magazine? Because I would have done a much better article on this.
Yeah, and that's just really the sad part of where journalism kind of is at this point.
Yeah.
Where you have too many people. You've got the whole geek journalist thing that carries a whole bunch of separate issues that I don't want to get into here. But you've got people who are more or less writing based solely on an emotional appeal and not actually doing their job as journalists, which the chief thing is reporting the facts as they are. That's the chief, most important duty of any and all journalists. There's no argument to that. It's like, but this. Like, no, your duty is to report the facts as they are, as they happen. Your duty is to the truth. I'd go into the full Captain Picard speech here of the whole like duty of every Starfleet officer, but it's true. That's the duty of a journalist. Your duty is to the truth.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's tons of there's tons of geeky references that we could bring up right now that would explain our point completely. But this whole story is just a massive mess, and really an example of where, I hate to say it, where media is right now. If you have people who are 100% social justice warriors coming out and they're considered credible journalists and they're writing these articles, it just makes me sad, because I know people who are looking for work. Mm-hmm. And these guys are not getting considered because these people are in those positions.
Yeah, the thing is, this speaks to a much larger problem, because the media, as we see it today, it has become more and more polarized. But that's not because of just the choices of the people in charge. That's what they've had to do in order to survive in this changing media landscape, where if you're not pro one opinion or against another opinion or so forth, you don't get any views, you don't get any traffic. That's the even sadder part, is that if you're not clearly taking one side or another, no one's going to listen to you. And that is not the kind of society we should be living in.
No, it really isn't. Now, I know we've derailed, but man, this has just been a bigger issue that has happened, and I can cite who knows how many examples. I mean, for crying out loud, like, part of me wants to go up to you guys and go, welcome to my weekend when I posted the Nostalrius video, because that's basically what this feels like, except it's you guys going through it. I'm already kind of there, but I'm trying to be very hard to be quiet.
Pretty much the point that we've kind of gone here is that this whole thing is ridiculous.
Yeah. And frankly, James can do with his money whatever he wants. I mean, for crying out loud, so is it okay if I mention this, Alex? Because we do vlogs and things like that, and there are some popular movies that you don't want to see, and you don't want to pay money for, and for various reasons. Either you're not interested in them, or you have no vested interest, or you just don't want to. Like Ghostbusters is one of those you just don't want to. Another example that we could give would be, so people have already asked if we're going to do a vlog for Star Trek Beyond. No, we're not, because, well, you haven't seen any of the Abrams Star Trek movies, so you're not invested. But people would get mad at us for that and go, why aren't you seeing the Star Trek movie? But that's our choice. Like, as much crap as I gave to, because people can attest this, it's on the video, I gave a ton of crap to Alex over him not wanting to see Terminator Genesis or Kung Fu Panda 3. I did it in good fun. There are people who are doing this, and it's legit hatred. And that's a sad state of affairs. And actually, people came out against me and said I was doing it out of legit hatred, but Alex knows better.
No, come on, he was just jesting. It's all fun.
But seriously, man, you need to see Kung Fu. No, I'm kidding. I think we've pretty much hammered this into the ground. Shall we move on?
Pretty
Let's
much.
move on.
All I can say is, if you want to see the movie, go see the movie. If you don't, don't. It's as simple as that.
I was actually going to ask you, Romney, because you made your announcement that you were going to avoid movies that had the hype. Does that include Ghostbusters? Or are you not going to see it because of the hype behind it?
Not necessarily. Ghostbusters I'm willing to give a fair shake because you have this polarizing opinion, and that's all the reason why I would probably see a film like Ghostbusters over something like any of the Marvel movies or Star Wars films that everybody says repeatedly ad nauseum are the greatest movies ever. And that's the difference, because with Ghostbusters, you have a difference in opinion on both sides. That gives me something to work with. When you're going into a movie that everybody says is the greatest, like Guardians of the Galaxy, Mad Max Fury Road, so on and so forth, that doesn't give me anything to work with, because it's basically like shouting into a chamber where everybody is already shouting. What's the point?
Do you want to know what this is actually basically telling me, Romney? Is because you and me have already said there's going to be another movie that we're trying to work out that you and I are going to go see, because we're the only ones on the panel that have any interest. I wonder if we actually have to add this to the list now.
We might.
Because at that point, because I'm coming in here from a kind of a negative perspective, I don't really know if I want to spend the money on the movie. But you are excited. You're at least willing to give it a shot.
Yeah, because that's what I'm thinking. Because I actually got into the debate where some people were saying, "Oh, they should have just brought the old people back." But I'm just thinking, well, if they brought the old cast members back, we run the risk of basically having Blues Brothers 2000, but with Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And so I'm willing to give this reboot its fair shake, because I figured, hey, they're trying something different. Granted, it's not that different when you're looking at all of the same beats, but I'm willing to give it a shot, because I don't have that nostalgia attached to it, and so I could offer an interesting perspective. In regards to the Marvel movies, which is why some people have given me so much crap, is that with the Marvel movies, people have already decided whether or not they're going to see it, and so anything I could possibly say or add to the discussion is kind of pointless, which is why I've stated that I'm not going to watch any of the Marvel movies during their theatrical run. I'm going to wait until they're on Blu-ray after all the hype has passed, after all of the stupid fan art, Tumblr, GIF bullshit has passed, and then I'll basically look at it on Blu-ray, on home video, and say, do these films still hold up?
Yep. You know what? Given how much we talked about this, I sense a crossover with you and me coming up on Ghostbusters. I have a feeling it's going to happen.
All right.
So at that
I'll
point,
at least watch that.
Well, yeah, I'm saying the two. I don't know if we'll get Aldo involved or anything like that, but yeah.
And like, to give people some perspective, the only nostalgia I have for Ghostbusters is that Extreme Ghostbusters cartoon, and that is it. And I thought that cartoon was pretty badass.
I
like that cartoon. In fact, if they had gone that direction, I probably would have been a little more on board with this instead of the whole idea of rebooting it.
That was actually an idea, I think, at one point. Like Ghostbusters 3, they had the script that Aykroyd and Ramis wrote, but there was actually another conceptual idea that at Ghostbusters that would be passing the torch would be Extreme Ghostbusters, roughly. And I do believe that I think it was Christina Ricci came out and said, yeah, she'd be part of it. She'd play the female Ghostbuster that's in it if they did it. It's just unfortunate the script never got out of development hell.
And with the death of Ramis, I don't think anybody's really going to touch that. And if this film doesn't do that well, the thing that's the disastrous consequence I see is that if the film bombs, Hollywood is just going to go, see, nobody wants movies with female leads. See, that's why it failed. It's not because we didn't do our job. It's not because we disrespected that. No, it's because the women's are starring in it.
Well, then I hate to be the bearer of bad news, because the next Star Wars movie has a female protagonist. Oh my gosh. I just realized I sound like Brian Regan. Oh my gosh!
Point being, I can see why some people are agitated in that regard, because Hollywood will make that stupid mistake, much like how they tried rushing a Green Lantern Corps movie to try to basically be the DC Universe version of Guardians of the Galaxy, or how everyone and their mother is trying to rush to make their own version of Guardians of the Galaxy because of how well that film did, without understanding why that film worked.
again, I'm not there with the Green Lantern Corps, but I'm biased, so I'm
Well,
not
it
going to
was
go
either with
there.
Green Lantern Corps or Legion of Superheroes. Basically, one of them said, hey, let's take this superhero property and have that be our version of Guardians of the Galaxy. Even though everybody looked at this and they're just like, why?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and move on into the entertainment portion of this evening, because there really isn't much we can add on to this.
Yeah.
However,
Speaking of the
Speaking of
DCU,
well, hold on. But with other discussions, I also want to open this up to you guys. If you agree or disagree, feel free to leave a comment below. Leave a comment on Facebook. Heck, write us an email at geekyweek@gmail.com and let us know what you think on the matter. I love it when we get not only our interaction as a panel, but also we get listeners saying, they're still going to go see the Ghostbusters even though they're really worried that it's not going to be good, kind of thing. Because I love seeing the argument actually happening legitimately. So please feel free to leave a comment, and who knows, you might actually see one of us come in and chime in our opinions on that as well. So let's go ahead and go into the first story here. And yes, speaking of the DCCU, so again, we keep on hearing about how this whole 68% loss for Batman v Superman wasn't a big deal, and it's not going to affect anything on the matter. And then the first story that comes out after that, or after a while, is a shakeup in the DCCU, at least movie making wise. So I tried to find who they're replacing, because I was concerned that one of them was Sujihara, because I don't necessarily have a problem with him, but we do have two major executive placements that are being replaced by John Berg, and I don't know who he is, but apparently he's the current Warner Brothers Pictures executive VP. And then another controversial choice that has been brought in is that Jeff Johns is going to be brought in to help out with the DC Cinematic Universe. Now, Jeff Johns has a very... If I start miscoloring this, Romney, please let me know. But he's got a very he's got a Zack Snyder-esque feel when it comes to comics. He's done good, but he's also done a lot of bad. So, like, for example, a good example for him would be, at least as far as comic culture is concerned, the Green Lantern run that he just recently did, where he expanded on the Green Lantern mythos, did Blackest Night, did a lot of those major events there. That's considered a good one on his roster. A bad one would be, at least the one that I can think of off the top of my head, he had a run with Wonder Woman for a while that really wasn't good. He didn't get the character, but even he came out and admitted, I don't get the character. So he has this kind of 50-50 deal, but since he's a comic writer, Warner Brothers has basically decided to bring him in on the DC Cinematic Universe and let him help out that process.
Yeah. At first, I was kind of wary of the choice because he was the co-producer and consultant on Green Lantern. However,
yes,
his body of work also includes being a consultant on Smallville, Arrow, and Flash, which are received a lot more favorably by fans of those characters. And so, at first I was thinking, oh, why are they bringing him back after Green Lantern? But then saying, okay, well, he's worked with the people on Smallville, Arrow, Flash. And so there it's like, okay, it makes a little bit more sense since he at least can provide somewhat of a guiding hand. How much of a guiding hand he'll be allowed to provide has yet to be seen. But it's a case of, okay, they've at least got somebody who's at least written for these characters before in at least one or two capacities to actually guide this a little bit, and we're not being stuck with, Snyder, the man who makes us forget that Superman's costume is blue.
And let's just say for the sake of argument, there are characters in here that he's never written for. But he still has enough connections over at DC to be able to bring in the person, or at least talk to the person who has. I've heard that Jeff Johns and Mark Waid have a fairly good working relationship. So at that point, like if he wants to go in for solid Superman advice, because Mark Waid has had a good run with Superman, he could do that. So at that point, I think that's actually the reason that, at least in my opinion, Jeff Johns is a good pick, because if he doesn't know the writer, he at least knows who to talk to to get a good writer on that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily good, but a better choice would be a better pick than no pick, is kind of how I would phrase it.
Yeah, a better pick would be, instead of just handing this over to, say, a guy that has no idea who these characters are and is expected to write them, Or, now, before people start... nitpicking this whole concept because I know this is going to come up. Like, how much is he going to be able to counter Zack Snyder? I don't think he's going to be able to counter that much. Zack is in charge. But Zack, I think they've actually gone on record as saying Zack and him have at least a tolerable relationship. So I think that's at least a sign of a good faith where Jeff could make these arguments and be able to say, maybe you ought to look at it from this perspective. Maybe you ought to have Superman's costume be more blue. Maybe you ought to do it. Maybe you ought to take Batman from this approach, kind of thing.
Yeah. And another thing to consider is that we don't know how much power Jeff Johns is being given, but, and I've even gone on record on this in my Monster Clash about Dawn of the Dead, if Zack Snyder is working with the right kind of people and is limited in what he can do, he can produce some pretty good work, like he did with Dawn of the Dead, because he had producers reining him in, he was working with a script written by James Gunn, and so it's kind of case of that film was actually tolerable because he was working with the right people. He's a lot like Frank Miller. He just needs to be reined in enough to actually start producing the good kind of work that is actually enjoyable.
Now, whether or not Jeff is that guy, we won't know. We won't know until Jeff actually gets into this position and tries to do this. Because, again, you've brought it up that he's been an advisor for a lot of these shows, but I think it's been more – it hasn't been like this is what he does for a living kind of capacity.
Yeah,
he's been brought in for these shows to be able to advise on this story angle or this, that, and the other, but now this is his job.
Yeah, and from what I've heard with the writers' rooms I can only speak in the case of Smallville because at the first Salt Lake Comic-Con we had Jake Black, who got his start in the comics industry by getting on the crew of Smallville, and a lot of the writers' rooms on these shows are more favorable for hearing from people from DC. They're a lot more open to hearing from people who've written these characters before because, like, hey, yeah, give us some ideas because we really want to make sure that this show is faithful to the characters, whereas something like the DC Cinematic Universe, as we have seen, may not be that open, but then again, that's probably what they're hoping to address by putting Jeff Johns in this position, by saying, okay, now we've got someone who has some authority in charge here who can guide this thing along to hopefully not piss off and alienate the fans any more than we already have.
Not only does he have the cred, but he also has the love for it. I mean, that's one of those things that I can say about the DC writers is when you get somebody like Grant Morrison, when you get somebody like Mark Waid, and even Jeff Johns, where if they have enough passion for it, you will see the love. And here's the thing, too, with some of these writers, like, say, Robert Kirkman gets brought in to write this stuff. He may not necessarily know everything he can. It's great to have Jeff in the room who is kind of the dictionary there. And he can say, no, this is why this character is awesome, and this is why you should be excited, and here's what you should probably do with this character angle. Now, I should also point out that along with this announcement, they did also say that Jeff Johns is co-writing the script for the Ben Affleck Batman movie. Okay, so that is confirmed. He's doing that. And I actually think that's a great decision. Because then excuse me, I burped on mic. I'm sorry. But just having that co-writer there, I know a lot of people wanted, I think it was Scott Snyder, the recent writer of Batman, to help out with that. But to have at least somebody, a veteran of comics, to come in and help write that experience is already an improvement as far as I'm concerned. Especially when it comes to these DC writers, because again, they are so... I can't speak so much for Jeff, but Mark and Grant have such passion for what they write. And so, and I've heard Jeff is along that line. I mean, obviously, he took a character that didn't have a whole lot of mythos, and granted, he had to stretch the truth a little bit when he did it, but he took Green Lantern from having this kind of mythos and then expanded on it and made it this whole other thing, enough so that there's basically a superhero team of Green Lanterns. And it's one of those things that I'm also kind of excited that he's helping out with Green Lantern Corps, because that's another movie that I really want to succeed. I really do. I don't want to have... Because I already know that crap, I can't remember. Ryan Reynolds isn't coming back.
Yeah.
And I still want it to be good.
Yeah, and I think it's probably... Because he's made it clear he does not want to come back as Hal Jordan.
No, that makes me sad, but I can see his perspective.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't blame him, and honestly, a lot of people... what is the guy's name? The one who's in the Justice League cartoons. A lot of people have been wanting that particular Green Lantern. I can't remember the character's name.
Jon Stewart.
Jon Stewart, yeah.
In fact, we reported on... I think, it was Dwayne Johnson. He was actually talking about getting it. This was before he got the Black Adam role. and he was talking about getting into the gym and taking on a superhero role, and he made the statement that I would like to be able to play Jon Stewart. And I would love to see Jon Stewart on camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the point being that that's one thing I like, although I haven't read a lot of Green Lantern comics, and that's one thing I like is that it's not a character, it's not an identity that's locked solely to one person. They're basically space cops, meaning that anybody, if they're deemed worthy to wield the ring, can become a Green Lantern. That's probably one of the biggest strengths that the Green Lantern mythos has, is that, it's not locked to just Alan Scott or Hal Jordan. You have Guy Gardner, you have Kyle Rayner, you have a whole bunch of other people who are also Green Lanterns.
Heck, you have the new guy that was brought in the new 52. I can't remember his name, but he's like, he had the ring only for a little bit, but then it's Simon something, Simon Baz. So you have tons of characters that you can go into, and granted, to people who are already going to ask me this, I've heard the rumor that about the possibility that Green Lantern 4 will focus with Guy Gardner as the main hero. I'm not keen on that, but that's just because I want to see Hal Jordan be that guy. Nothing against Guy, but there are other stories where he's kind of the side dude that I would like to see done, especially with him going secret agent on Red Lanterns and stuff like that. I don't know if we're going to see that in these movies, but that's what I want on the matter. Nothing against Guy. I have issues with his character, but it's just a personal preference. I want to see Hal there, or if I have to adjust to it, give me John or give me Kyle on the matter. So, Alex, you've been kind of quiet on this matter. What do you think about, now that you've heard some of the stuff on Jeff Johns, is it a good idea for him to be brought into the DC Cinematic Universe?
Well, it's hard for me to really comment because I don't read comics, so I don't really know much about the guy. Just the idea, though, of a shakeup in the upper management sounds like a pretty good idea at this point. DC is desperately trying to catch up with Marvel and ride their coattails of success, but they're not doing a very good job of it. Now, at the end of the day, I don't read comics, so for me to get interested in any of these heroes and so forth, it's usually through the movies. I got to see the movies. That's what I do. And Marvel's done a great job of that because they got me interested. Oh, Iron Man, that movie looks interesting. Yeah, I want to go see that. Green Lantern, though, that looks kind of lame. I don't think I'm going to go see that. So if DC can have some shakeups in the management, make some interesting movies, especially now that they're trying to get into the whole cinematic universe business, then maybe they can make a believer out of me.
Yeah. Actually, in case you're specifically, Alex, if you're interested, if you want to see some of Jeff Johns' work, because a lot of his stuff is, again, with DC, and so he's actually been involved in a lot of the live-action TV series, the games, and the animated TV series. So, snippet here, because we've said it here and there, Alex has actually been watching some stuff on Netflix. There are 2 DC movies that he helped write that you could probably look into and get a feel for his style. So I'm going to recommend that you look into Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox and Justice League War, because those are more recent stuff, and he is credited as a writer to them. So that would probably give you a good feel of who Jeff Johns is and how he writes. Because I'll grant you, like, Jeff writes a little darker than I think Grant does, but I think he'll be okay with it. So, final thoughts before we move on to the next story here. I think this is a great idea, personally.
We'll just have to wait and see if
whether or not
anything pans out.
Whether or not it bears fruit. So I'm actually going to skip to the next story here. We're going to talk about that other story, Romney. I'm sorry, but we're going to talk about it. But this is one that, oh man, we've gotten listeners recommend this, and I just could never find a way to be able to interject it into an agenda. And we've been hearing about it for a couple of months now. In fact, Alex has been there for a lot of personal debates of whether or not I should put the story in. So, in case you didn't know, a while back, CW actually commissioned some writers to come up with a prototype script for the series Riverdale. Now, a lot of people might go, okay, well, what's that about? Basically, if you don't know what Riverdale is, especially in the term of comics, they're basically trying to create an Archie series. Yeah, Archie is in that 1950s comic that keeps getting referenced here and there.
Well, that's how it would appear to the
Yeah.
casual person who only knows that aspect of Archie.
Yes. No, no, no. If you're going to go on with it. So they came up with a script, and now it looks like the script was good enough that they're actually considering bringing Riverdale to the CW. And already they're starting to make. I can't vouch for this because it's been forever since I read an Archie comic, but they're already making some controversial choices. In particular, they've now revealed that one of the concepts they're going to do is a forbidden relationship between the Archie character and Miss Grundy. Now, you might have to clarify this for me, Romney. Miss Grundy was like a teacher, wasn't she?
Yes, she is. Now, before people flip out, let me explain something.
Okay.
This isn't going to be an Archie series that's a direct adaptation of the comics.
No.
Yeah, this is going to be basically they're going to do to the Archie comics what you get with stuff like Life with Archie or Afterlife with Archie. With Life with Archie, you get the adult drama, soap opera sort of storylines. With Afterlife with Archie, it's set with a zombie apocalypse. Here, from what I'm looking at the synopsis, it looks like they're trying to give the city of Riverdale kind of the Twin Peaks treatment. I'm going to read off kind of the synopsis that has actually been pitched and is going to be picked up as a mid-season replacement show around, like, the projected date would be January 2017. So basically, here is the actual pitch of Riverdale. As the new school year begins, the town of Riverdale is reeling from the recent tragic death of high school golden boy Jason Blossom, and nothing feels the same. Archie Andrews is still the all-American teen, but the summer's events made him realize that he wants to pursue a career in music, not follow in his dad's footsteps, despite the sudden end of his forbidden relationship with Riverdale's young music teacher, Miss Grundy.
Yeah.
Which means Archie doesn't have anyone who will mentor him, certainly not singer Josie McCoy, who is only focused on her band, the soon-to-be world-famous Pussycats. It's all weighing heavily on Archie's mind, as is his fractured friendship with the budding writer and fellow classmate Jughead Jones. Meanwhile, girl next door Betty Cooper is anxious to see her crush Archie after being away all summer, but she's not quite ready to reveal her true feelings to him, and Betty's nerves, which are hardly soothed by her overbearing mother, aren't the only thing holding her back when new student Veronica Lodge arrives in town from New York with her mother Hermione. There's an undeniable spark between her and Archie, even though Veronica doesn't want to risk her new friendship with Betty by making a play for Archie. And then there's Cheryl Blossom. Riverdale's Queen Bee is happy to stir up trouble amongst Archie, Betty, and Veronica, but Cheryl is keeping secrets of her own. What exactly is she hiding about the mysterious death of her twin brother, Jason? And that's where I'm getting kind of the Twin Peaks vibe here, is that, okay, it has some of the teen drama stuff the CW is known for, but then it's also case, okay, that means the death of Jason Blossom is obviously going to be the pivotal mystery of this series.
Yes, and so already this is a very stiff turn from what people who have read Archie before would be used to, because what is it, Betty and Veronica, they're always constantly fighting over him. And yeah, I agree with your concept. This is more the darkening concept. Somebody actually brought this idea to me, and I think it kind of fleshes the whole concept out. Is the way that they're trying to pitch Riverdale is basically with these wholesome characters, but taking kind of a modern-day Dawson's Creek with them and making them edgy and making them more relatable to a modern demographic kind of thing.
Which is kind of what plays to the strength of the Archie comics as a whole, is because that's pretty much what they've been doing in the main comics line for decades, is basically constantly updating the characters, constantly addressing issues of the time. I mean, when you look at the introduction of characters like Kevin Keller, for example, that would have never happened in the 50s, at least not in the way that we know Kevin Keller today, and so that's kind of what they've constantly been doing. I mean, why else do you think they can actually seriously write a comic where Archie encounters Predator?
Yeah, or the Punisher, for that matter.
Or Sharknado, somehow.
Did they really do that?
Yes, they did! You can buy it! It exists!
Wow.
But point being, that plays to the strength of Archie as a franchise, is that, hey, we have this really core this really strong core set of characters. We can tell basically whatever story we want to, and they're actually really open to that. I mean, if you look at one of my favorite takes that they've done at Archie has been Afterlife with Archie, because it's not the golly gee willikers, the Pop Tate's shop is being overrun by zombies. It's like, no, this is a straight-up zombie apocalypse. These people are having to deal with the absolute worst of humanity as they're trying to survive and not be eaten and become members of the Walking Dead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so 50-50 on this matter because, like, part of me wants to just say I don't think they should do a Riverdale series. The stuff that they're at least saying is, granted, I'm not the demographic that they're aiming for here. If anything, my wife would probably be that demographic. But I'm just like sitting there going, okay, you're doing some interesting stuff, but again, it's Archie and I'm just not interested in it.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm not quick to write off the series. After reading Afterlife with Archie, especially in regards to where they've taken the characters of Jason and Cheryl Blossom, I'm thinking here, like, okay, some of the stuff we've learned about them might actually play a role in this upcoming series, especially, which is why it gives me more of that Twin Peaks. It gives me that Twin Peaks vibe. Without giving too much away,
Yeah.
Let's just say with Jason and Cheryl Blossom, there are quite a few allusions to a story known as Flowers in the Attic. That's most I'll say on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to fault what they're trying to do here. They got to find a story out of this somehow, and so again, I'm not saying that this is a bad idea. This has potential to it. It's just, again, it's not catering to me. If anything, it would cater to my wife on the matter to see whether or not it would work. But that's fine. Go the route that you're going to go. And this just all reminds me that I need to finish Afterlife with Archie. I think I started up like half of the first comic, and then I didn't get back. So maybe that'll get me excited for it. Alex, do you have any thoughts on Riverdale?
Not really, because I don't know anything about Archie beyond, hey, they appeared in The Simpsons once.
Oh, they did, didn't they?
Yeah.
That was a weird thing.
And Sonic. I think Sonic appeared in Archie at one point, because it's the same people.
Well, yeah, because that's a separate thing, because there have been crossovers, because what a lot of people don't realize, Archie comics, they publish Archie, they publish Sabrina, that's why we have Sabrina the Teenage Witch, because that's one of theirs.
Yep.
They published the Sonic comics, they published the Mega Man comics, so there actually was a crossover comic between Sonic Underground and Sabrina the Teenage Witch at a weird, mysterious point in time. So, yeah, like Sonic's appeared, the Ninja Turtles have appeared, Kiss has appeared. We already mentioned Predator and Sharknado and the Punisher. They've done a lot of crossovers.
Yeah, so, I mean, at this point, this is going to cater to somebody. It's just, unfortunately, as much as I would like to say it's going to cater to one of us, it's not really in our demographic.
I mean, I'll at least watch the first episode to see what they do with it, if it's going to be the Dawson Creek route or the Twin Peaks route. If it goes the Twin Peaks route, I'd be more open to it. But if it goes the Dawson's Creek route, maybe not, because, well, it's just the CW being the CW, because they basically cater all of their programming to teenagers anyway, and so it's kind of because of, okay, if that's what they do, then, yeah, that'll be what they do.
And to your argument, I mean, if I saw this thing on Netflix or Amazon for free, yeah, I'd watch it. I'd watch the first episode just to see if it was interesting.
Yeah, and the thing that I really like about a lot of the Archie, the more outlandish stuff, is that instead of being ashamed of the fact they're doing it, with each iteration, they straight up own it. It's like, yeah, we know this is ridiculous. We're still going to tell it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really kind of the frame of mind that you need to take concepts like this. That's a good frame of mind. So final thoughts before we move on into the next story here. None. Okay. Here's where we break the desks, people. So people might remember, if you've been listening to the show for a while now, especially during the Radio SLCC days. First of all, thank you for your continued contributions. But you might remember that I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Honestly, I really don't. This is like the whole Michael Bay thing, without actually making that reference. So you might remember a couple of years ago we reported on the rumor that a Tetris movie was in the works. And that it created somewhat of a headache with our dear Stephen Romney. Mm-hmm. Imagine his surprise when he found the story that the Tetris movie not only got approved, it got an $80 million budget and begins shooting next year.
Yeah.
And yet they don't have a director or a writer even announced for it.
Nope, nor a script.
Sadly, that's the Hollywood machine in a nutshell. They think, oh, this is a well-known thing. Let's make a movie of the thing.
You know what? You're right on that. This is the Hollywood machine, because only Hollywood would think that you could make a video game movie based off of falling blocks a bestseller.
Yeah.
I couldn't even find this on IMDb in the pros section just to see if anybody was remotely in talks or rumored. Nothing. Yeah. I can't find this thing anywhere.
So far, all that we know is that it is a co-production between China and the United States. So now you can see why they're rushing this into production.
Which already just instills confidence in you people, right? I mean, totally.
Oh, it gets better. Much better. Guess who one of the producers is? Larry Kassanov. Mm-hmm. Yes, the guy behind Mortal Kombat and Food Fight.
Oh, joy.
You're not talking that Food Fight, are you?
Oh, I am!
Do you know another Food Fight?
Do you know another Food Fight? Is there another such piece of cinema?
I was literally clamoring in my head for another movie that was called Food Fight.
Oh,
because
no.
I was hoping beyond hope you were not meaning that abomination.
Oh, I am. I am.
Charlie Sheen, Wayne Brady, Hilary Duff.
Yes, the film that somebody tried to
Christopher
steal.
Lloyd.
Yes, the film that somebody deemed worthy enough to steal the raw footage for, setting them back a good decade.
Well,
yes, that Larry Kassanov is one of the producers.
Well,
alongside
can I make a suggestion? Can I make a suggestion? Can we not hand him the keys to the office?
Well, that's the thing. Someone's just more or less... it'll be funny if this happens where they make this Tetris movie and then someone just decides to steal it. Let history repeat itself.
Okay, you might need to clarify this for me, Romney, but Food Fight had like a $65 million budget, didn't it?
Yep.
Why on earth would you hand this guy an even bigger budget?
Because he's not the main thing they're trying to get the money from. They're trying to get the money from Bruno Wu, a Chinese billionaire and media giant. He's the one who's more or less bankrolling the whole project.
Okay. Well, I'm officially convinced this is going to be a piece of crap.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty much been convinced, especially when Kassanov announced back in 2014 plans to make Tetris an epic sci-fi thriller.
Yeah, or the other one I heard was sci-fi fantasy kind of thing, and it's like, neither of those fit what you're trying to describe. Yeah. But then again, I didn't think an Angry Birds movie had much of a premise either.
Yeah, and the thing is, people, they've tried putting a story to Tetris. It didn't work. So why the hell are you doing it again?
No, at the very most, what should have happened here is like Tetris should have gotten a cameo in the next Wreck-It Ralph movie, or something like that. That makes more sense. Or Tetris shows up in Pixels. You know, the Adam Sandler movie everybody hated. That makes sense.
Yeah, and honestly...
Getting a full-on movie based on falling blocks.
Yeah, and honestly, there is a story. Problem is they're looking in the wrong place. And I know they're never going to do the idea that I'd be pitching, because they're working with China, which is a communist country. And if I were to make a Tetris movie, it wouldn't be like a sci-fi thriller. It would just basically be a story about the creator of Tetris, a Soviet programmer who basically first made this game in the Soviet Union, and how he eventually, left the Soviet Union and came to the United States, and was able to make his fortune by basically making one of the most popular puzzle games of all time. There's a story there, but I know they're not going to do it because it's like, oh, we can't have this movie produced by China that's critical of communism because, communist country.
Yeah, it's just, oh, Jiminy Christmas, why was this pegged as an idea? Okay, so funny story here. I told this story to my wife, and even she, and Alex, you can attest to this. She'll see a crappy movie and still find some level of entertainment from it. Okay? She literally looked at me and literally lifted an eyebrow, said, "Are you serious? They're making a movie on falling blocks." And her and me went into literally like an hour-long conversation just before this podcast on where that $80 million could have gone to a better video game property. on the matter. And we came up with so many. Like, how many people are screaming for a Zelda movie? An $80 million budget? That makes it at least a decent one.
Yeah, I get the feeling that maybe this movie is the movie is a money laundering scheme. That's my official theory. The movie is a money laundering scheme.
I almost looked into this whole concept to see if maybe this Bruno Wu guy was doing the Uwe Boll thing and trying to exploit Chinese tax laws or something like that. He was getting a loophole, so he was going to get some kind of profit out of it.
Must be it. That's gotta be it.
But I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, I think the only loophole you can really exploit is that, since it's produced by a Chinese company, that means we can distribute the film here in China and not have it count as one of the 20 foreign films they allow in the country that every year.
Yeah, but at the same time, it blows. Like, a Tetris movie, fine. Okay, you get a movie on that regard. The part that bugs me about this is the $80 million budget. How many animation projects that we wanted to succeed never got a budget that high? And now you wish that they had. You wish that this $80 million budget was going to them. And no, falling blocks. Oh, Jiminy Christmas, it hurts so bad.
I made this joke before we started. It really made me think of the joke from The Simpsons when Rainier Wolfcastle's talking to Jay Sherman, and he says, the entire movie is me standing in front of a brick wall for 2.5 hours. It cost $80 million to make.
The only difference is that the blocks are moving, and if they make a line, they will disappear. That's literally the difference here, people. Oh my gosh. I don't know who thought... Well, apparently Bruno Wu thought this was a good idea, and yeah. I'm just going to kick myself so hard if this actually proves to be successful for him.
Yeah. You know what? I do have an idea. If they want to go the sci-fi thriller, there is one way it could work. If it's done as a complete comedic farce. If they do not take it seriously at all and just basically make it as a parody of The Last Starfighter, that is the only way it could be good, is if it's a complete farce that doesn't take itself seriously. That is the only way that could work.
So basically what you're proposing is that they go the Pixels route. Roughly.
Yeah.
Pixels with a better script.
Pixels with a better script, yeah. That would be the better way I'd put it. It would basically a mixture of Spaceballs with The Last Starfighter. That would be the best way I'd put it.
Yeah.
By the way, looking at XE.com, $80 million is about 523,672 million Chinese yuan. So this for China, this is going to be about a $500 million budgeted movie in their currency.
The Triads have got to be involved in this. This has definitely got to be. Oh, this is a money laundering scheme by the Triads.
We're going to find that out later. We really are. So final thoughts on this before we move on. We're going to cover one more story and then we're going to wrap things up.
I mean, just why? I mean, though, at least you mentioned a Zelda movie, and Nintendo's looking into that idea now to finally start making some Nintendo movies. So there's some silver lining there.
Yeah, but just watch. Just watch where this becomes the setup for another cinematic universe, where first you have Tetris, then Bejeweled, then Candy Crush, then Boggle somehow, and soon it leads to a giant epic team-up movie called Puzzle Game.
I was actually going to say then Farmville, and then you have all of that added in as well.
Well, that'll be the cinematic universe. Sim City, Sim Farm, Sims, Sim Tower, Farmville.
Sim Music somehow, because, well, that's actually a pretty good game.
Sim Earth, Sim Ant. We could go on and on, but...
And then it'll... the team-up movie... Here's what the team-up movie, in that Sim Cinematic Universe, the team-up movie will be Spore.
So basically Penis the movie, is what you're saying?
Why do I get the feeling that's going to end up as a very compromising Google search?
Well, we already have plenty of those. So let's go ahead and move on into the last story of the night, which didn't make our agenda, but I have backups just in case we go through it too harshly. And this one I don't think made our roster last week, but it got prioritized this week, which was a recent announcement from Capcom, and this is a tech story, So Capcom came out, and I can't remember who actually made this quote, but this pretty much sums up all of the problems that we've been having with Capcom over the last couple of years. So to ensure games are up to standard, Capcom will now carry out development in a way that prioritizes, quote, prioritizes completeness over firm development deadlines. For example, many, including, believe some aspects of Street Fighter V, could have used more polish at launch.
Most unorthodox.
By Jove, they're talking absolute balderdash, my friend, aren't they? I can't believe they're saying these horrible things, sir.
Zoons. That's all I can say.
Zoons, yes. This was a Capcom quote, people. This sums up every problem I had with Street Fighter V in my review, and I still have hardcore Street Fighter V fans saying I didn't give the game a chance, and criticizing me for not giving the game a chance when the story mode actually releases in June. Maybe if they had prioritized completeness and actually pulled out the full story mode onto that game, I wouldn't have had all the problems that I did. Maybe if they had prioritized completeness in some of their other products, we wouldn't be having all of their major franchises sucking right now, and therefore getting moved back to the D-list while they get reworked. Capcom, why wasn't this your idea 3 years ago?
Because they thought they could get away with everything until they lost $6 million on Resident Evil 6.
Because
no,
of
10
focus
million.
groups.
Well,
yeah, it was 10 million.
Yeah, it was 10 million. And so basically they thought, oh, we can get away with this for a long time. On to DLC, nobody will notice that.
We might still bring this up with Aldo, because I'm sure he has a few words to chime in on this one. But, oh man, this pissed me off so badly, because if they're coming out and saying, well, we're going to prioritize completeness, they already have some games in development, people. Some big, highly anticipated ones, one of which is the Resident Evil 2 remake, the game that people have been asking for 10-plus years for them to make. And now they decided to prioritize completeness? Seriously, that should have been my byline tonight. I'm prioritizing completeness. Holy moly. Capcom, you wonder why you're in the mess you're in. Alex, your thoughts on prioritizing completeness. Is it a good thing to do?
Well, of course it's not a good thing. I mean, come on. I mean, think about the money.
We need to interject focus groups into every possible aspect of our gaming that we can maybe shoehorn them into.
Twirls evil mustache. I mean, congratulations, Capcom. You finally learned game design 101. I mean, you've only been a company for, what, 40, 30 years? Actually, how long has Capcom been around? I really don't know.
Good question.
20, 30 years. Something like that.
To Wikipedia.
20, 30 years, because they've been...
I'd say around 30, because Mega Man had their 25th anniversary. I know that much.
Yeah, because I'm going through the generations in my head, and I know that Capcom didn't have anything on 2600, but they did have arcade stuff at that point. So,
okay.
Yeah, we're talking 20 years.
Capcom founded May 30th, 1979. 36 years.
36 years. And this is now a priority for them. Whomever is currently working in your infrastructure right now, you need to fire them and go find the old fogies that you fired and put them back in those positions. Because they knew what they were doing. I have no words on this whole thing. Like, I saw this and I immediately had to put it in the agenda, and I still want to hear Aldo's opinion on it. Hell, I want to hear Brenton's opinion on it. Because prioritizing completeness, it's almost like it should have been a thing.
Yeah.
In fact, Romney, you prioritize completeness in your reviews, don't you?
Of course. I mean, true, I still screw up, but I still do prioritize completeness.
Yeah, no.
The only mistakes you tend to see is when I accidentally forget to edit out a blooper or two.
Yeah. But there's just...
In the
Go ahead.
In the words of Shakespeare, I am amazed. I know not what to say.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. It makes me want to go dig out all those comments that I got over the Street Fighter V review and just paste this comment everywhere. Because this is exactly the problem that I was having, is that they didn't prioritize completeness, and that's why we got a whole mishmash of nothing, and we should have gotten a full-on completed game. So, final thoughts on this.
Capcom, take a page from Nintendo. They've been around about 100 years longer than you have.
And they were making card games. And not of the ancient Egyptian variety. Or here's a great idea. How about you take well, I was going to say take an example from Konami, but Konami's off in the erotic violence territory now, so I don't know if I want them to take an example from that. So let's go ahead and wrap this up, because there's really not a whole lot that we can add to this, because the stupidity is right there in black and white. I'll post it up on Facebook so you guys can all read it and facepalm collectively. So let's go ahead and wrap things up for the evening. If you liked what we had to say, if you didn't like what we had to say, good. That's your opinion on the matter. But if you want to reach out to these wonderful individuals and maybe even see the content that they produce, Alex, how do they get a hold of you for that?
Well, of course, you can follow me here on YouTube. ShadowLaser3000 is my channel, and I do lots of anime reviews and the occasional Let's Play when I feel like it. And, of course, if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me at Twitter, at AlexJShort is my handle.
Romney, good sir. If people want to talk to you about the insanity of prioritizing completeness, how do they get a hold of you to do that?
Well, you can always find me here on YouTube at youtube.com/StudioGhostUtah. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Romney'sReviews, no apostrophe, and I am also on Twitter at RomneyReviews. And as for this week's recommendations for Romney's Reading Club, it's a twofold recommendation, one that is fun and one that is fascinating. For fun, I'm recommending the unbelievable Gwenpool. I've been enjoying the comics. They tend to pick up when you look at the ones done by Gurihiru. I mean, the Howard the Duck ones are kind of okay, but once you get into the Gurihiru run, it gets a little bit better. That's when the series hits its stride. And as for the fascinating recommendation, the book I recommend is Lies My Teacher Told Me. There's been a lot of crap that's been perpetuated in your textbooks that is either inaccurate or just a very ethnocentric portrayal of history.
Or a very biased one.
That's what ethnocentric means.
Yeah. I'm clarifying it because my brain's not working. Because, I've had that issue the last couple of months. With certain textbooks. If people want to get a hold of me, now people might have wondered why I didn't give a comment to Alex, and frankly there's a reason I didn't, because, well, he ain't afraid of no SJWs, and so I have a feeling that if anybody actually came to him with an SJW kind of opinion, his response would be, come at me, Scrub Lord, I'm ripped. Fair assessment?
Fair assessment.
All right. If people want to get a hold of me, there are two ways to do it, and they're exactly the same as far as name goes. You could go to my Twitter, at Dirac2326, and leave your comment there. And I do check it, so you can feel free to leave it there, and I'll try to reply to you in 140 characters or less. But I will admit I have a little bit of trouble when it comes to that, because I get kind of ranty. Shut up, Alex. I know. Then also you can go to my YouTube channel, Dirac2326. That is where Geek News is hosted. You can see this episode as well as the huge archive that we have going all the way back to 2014 of all the episodes that we have done for Geek News each week. Well, each week, aside from the ones that we had to miss, because that happened. You got those, as well as, and I'm going to, again, pimp this concept because it's going to be a big thing. This summer is the summer of Gaming with the Geeks, and I am getting together with each and every one of these panelists so that you can get to know them, you can get to know their content, you can ask them the questions that you've been dying to ask them for such a long time. And if you want to do that, whether you be a subscriber of my content or theirs, you can leave your questions at geekyweek@gmail.com, and they will be put into the Q&As that will be done at the end of these Let's Plays. And if you want an example of this, because it just barely started this week, me and Brenton got together to do a little bit of Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition. And there are 4 videos up. You guys can enjoy it and have a blast. And I guarantee you'll have as much fun as me and Brenton did while recording it, especially when we get to the mentioning of Sassy Senoritas. Because That was just a thing that Brenton wanted to say. It was awesome. If you want to get a hold of the show directly, there are 4 ways to do it. 2 are social networking, so I'll go ahead and go over them right now, and that is our Twitter, @GeekyNRO, and our Facebook. If you look up Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions and like it, you can get up-to-the-minute information from both of these areas, from both of these channels, whatever you want to call them, on when we're going live, the stories that we're going to be covering, all of the links that I do for the various other pieces of content that all of the panelists do, including myself, including any other crossovers that they do, because they do them. I mean, for crying out loud, a lot of people didn't even consider this concept, but the whole bonus review that we did of Ratchet and Clank, that was a crossover of Aldo, Brinton, and Romney, because I wasn't there, but they just used the Geek News tag on that, and people enjoyed it. So those are the social networking ways to be able to get a hold of us. And again, if you want to leave your opinion on the stories that we covered tonight, that's the place to do it. You can also go to geekyweek@gmail.com. You can leave questions for the Q&As for these guys. You can also leave stories that you would like us to cover, maybe even suggest them, maybe even give us a couple of stories comparing both sides of the argument. I love it when you guys do that, and there's very few of you that do. I really wish everybody would do that, because that's awesome. That's tons of work off of my shoulders. And then also you can leave your opinions on the stories that we covered, as well as whatever suggestions you would like to see us do in the future. Because I can guarantee you the Let's Plays are not going to be it. We are going to be getting together for some Smash Bros. We're going to be getting together for a bunch of other multiplayer stuff that's happening. And then you could also go to geekyweek.podomatic.com, and you will get the archive of all of the 2016 episodes that are up there. I've tried to keep this to just 2016 until I get to a point where I can add in the rest of the archive from YouTube and maybe even from the SLCC days. I have to dig that out. And I know that the last 2 weeks' episodes are not up just yet. They're almost done, and they will be up soon. I can promise that. It's just like with Romney. The last 2 weeks have been insane for me. And I'm hoping that things kind of ease out, but who knows? We'll make sure that you guys get that content. And on the Podomatic, you can also subscribe to iTunes and get an active feed there as well. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. We hope you guys have enjoyed. We continue to love your contributions to the show, whether they be positive or negative. We love your feedback because we do implement it. But in the meantime, that's going to do it for us this week. So until next week, for me, for Alex, for Romney, and for those who are not able to make it, we'll see you next time for even more Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions.